The massacre and the survivor. The sky burned. Jack Carter watched from the rubble of a collapsed building as Earth fell. The once blue sky was now filled with black smoke and glowing fire. Alien warships hovered above, their massive cannons unleashing destruction on the last human cities. Screams echoed through the streets. Buildings crumbled. The air smelled of fire, blood, and metal. Jack had seen war before. He was a soldier, a veteran. But nothing like this. This wasn't a battle. It was extermination. The Galactic Dominion, a ruthless alien empire, had decided that humanity was a threat. They came with fleets of warships, millions of soldiers, and weapons far beyond anything Earth had. There was no warning, no chance to surrender. The invasion started and ended in just a few days. Now, Earth was silent. Jack lay under the rubble, bleeding from his shoulder. His armor was broken, his rifle empty. He had fought until the last bullet, until the last soldier beside him fell. He should have been dead too. But he wasn't. The mistake. The alien warships hovered over the ruined planet, scanning for survivors. Their commanders wanted to be sure. No humans left. No resistance possible. A towering alien officer, clad in dark battle armor, walked through the ruins. His name was Commander HFY, one of the Dominion's highest-ranking warlords. His soldiers followed, their glowing eyes scanning the wreckage. "Is it done?" HFY asked, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. "Yes, Commander," an alien soldier replied. "The human military is destroyed. Their leaders are dead. Their people, gone." HFY let out a low growl of satisfaction. "Good. The Dominion is safe from their kind." Another soldier hesitated before speaking. "There is one survivor." HFY turned sharply. "Where?" The soldier pointed at Jack Carter, who lay half-buried under rubble, barely breathing. His uniform was torn, his face covered in blood and dust. HFY looked down at the human. Weak, helpless, defeated. He could have ordered his men to finish the job. A simple plasma shot to the head. It would take 1 second. But instead he laughed. "A single human? What can one do?" HFY smirked. "Let him live. Let him see what has happened to his world." His soldiers hesitated. Leaving an enemy alive was against protocol. HFY waved his hand. "He is broken. He is nothing. He will die soon enough, alone." The alien warlord turned away, marching back toward his waiting ship. His biggest mistake. The last human stands. Jack Carter opened his eyes. The world around him was quiet. The warships were gone. The aliens had left. Pain shot through his body as he pushed himself up. His muscles screamed, his head pounded. He was dehydrated, wounded, exhausted. But he was alive. Jack looked around. The cities were gone. The people were gone. His family, his friends, his fellow soldiers, his entire race. Jack clenched his fists. His breathing was heavy, his chest rising and falling with anger, with grief. They had left him alive. A mistake. Slowly, he stood up, his legs shaking but firm. His training kicked in. He checked his wounds, found scraps of supplies, and took a broken rifle from a fallen soldier's hands. It had no ammo, but that didn't matter. Because Jack Carter was not dead yet. And as long as he lived, humanity still had a chance. He wasn't going to die here. Not in the ruins. Not in the dirt. He was going to fight. Jack took one last look at the burning horizon. He didn't know how, but he was going to make the aliens regret leaving him alive. And the Galactic Dominion was about to learn what happened when they underestimated a human. The last human standing. The human spirit never dies. The cold wind blew across the ruins of Earth. Jack Carter stood in the wreckage, his body weak but his mind burning with a single thought: survival. The aliens thought they had won. They thought humanity was extinct. But one human still remained. Hunted, but not broken. Jack moved through the remains of a once great city. Towers lay in pieces, streets cracked open, and vehicles were nothing but burnt skeletons. Smoke still rose in the distance, the smell of destruction heavy in the air. His legs ached, his wounds stung, but he pushed forward. Pain meant he was alive. The Dominion had left, but Jack wasn't safe. Their drones still patrolled the skies, scanning for survivors. No loose ends, no escape. He had no food, no water, no weapons, but he had his will. Jack's eyes locked onto a collapsed military base in the distance. If he could reach it, he might find supplies, maybe even weapons. He had to try. A dead world, a living ghost. He moved like a shadow, staying low, using the wreckage as cover. The training drilled into him over years of combat guided every step. The drones whirred above, scanning, searching. Jack held his breath. One wrong move, and he was dead. Minutes passed, then hours. Step by step, he reached the base. The entrance was buried under rubble. Jack clenched his jaw. No problem. He started digging with his bare hands, ignoring the sharp edges that tore at his skin. Blood smeared on the broken concrete, but he didn't stop. After what felt like forever, he found an opening, a narrow tunnel leading into the underground bunkers. Jack slipped inside, swallowed by darkness. Humanity's last arsenal. The air was stale, thick with dust. Jack activated a broken flashlight from his gear, its flickering beam revealing the lost world beneath the ruins. Rows of destroyed weapons and shattered armor lined the walls. The place had been bombed, but not everything was gone. Jack searched, his fingers shaking from exhaustion. Then he found it, a hidden supply crate, buried under debris. His heart pounded as he pried it open. Inside, a half-functional exosuit, its power cells damaged but usable. A pulse rifle, low on ammo, but still deadly. A combat knife, its edge sharp as vengeance. Jack exhaled, gripping the rifle. He wasn't unarmed anymore. The aliens thought they had crushed Earth's last soldier. They were wrong. The first move. Jack powered up the exosuit. It whirred weakly, struggling, but it responded. His body felt lighter, his movements smoother. The pain faded into the background. Then he heard it. A deep hum, the sound of alien engines. Jack's eyes snapped upward. Through a crack in the bunker's ceiling, he saw a Dominion dropship descending. His pulse quickened. They were still here. Did they know he was alive? Were they looking for something? Jack didn't care. It didn't matter. The fight had come to him. He gripped the rifle and whispered to himself, time to return the favor. The first battle of Jack Carter's war was about to begin. The first strike. Fear begins to spread. The air vibrated with the deep hum of alien engines. The Dominion dropship hovered over the ruins, its searchlights sweeping across the debris. Jack Carter crouched in the shadows, gripping his half-functional pulse rifle. His exosuit whirred softly, its damaged servos straining to keep him steady. He watched as the dropship lowered onto what used to be a human street. Dust and ash swirled in the air as the landing ramp extended. Then, the enemy stepped out. The hunters arrived. A squad of Dominion shock troopers marched onto the ground, their black armor glistening under the ship's eerie blue lights. These were not the weak foot soldiers Jack had fought before. Elite hunters. Jack counted 7 of them. Each carried plasma carbines, their helmets scanning the area for movement. They weren't just patrolling. They were searching for something. Jack. His grip on the rifle tightened. The Dominion had lied to themselves. They told their people that humanity was gone, that their war was won. So why were they here? Why send a hunter squad to an empty planet? Because they knew. Somewhere, deep in their alien minds, they had started to fear. They feared him. Jack smirked. Good. Let's make it worse. One shot. One war begins. Jack exhaled slowly. His body was exhausted, his wounds still fresh. But he pushed everything aside. He only had one chance. He steadied his pulse rifle, lining up the shot. The troopers scanned the wreckage, weapons raised. Closer, closer. One stopped directly beneath his position. Jack pulled the trigger. A burst of blue energy ripped through the alien's head, sending its body crashing to the ground. The other soldiers spun around, weapons raised, but Jack was already moving. Using the exosuit's weakened thrusters, he leaped from his hiding spot, landing hard behind cover. Plasma bolts rained down, searing the metal debris around him. Jack rolled, aimed, and fired again. Another trooper fell, his armor shattering under the force of the pulse shot. Panic rippled through the squad. They had expected a survivor, not a fighter, not a ghost. Jack wasn't just hiding. He was hunting them. Part 3. The First Strike. Fear begins to spread. The air vibrated with the deep hum of alien engines. The Dominion dropship hovered over the ruins, its searchlights sweeping across the debris. Jack Carter crouched in the shadows, gripping his half-functional pulse rifle. His exosuit whirred softly, its damaged servos straining to keep him steady. He watched as the dropship lowered onto what used to be a human street. Dust and ash swirled in the air as the landing ramp extended. Then, the enemy stepped out. The hunters arrive. A squad of Dominion shock troopers marched onto the ground, their black armor glistening under the ship's eerie blue lights. These were not the weak foot soldiers Jack had fought before. Elite hunters. Jack counted 7 of them. Each carried plasma carbines, their helmets scanning the area for movement. They weren't just patrolling. They were searching for something. Jack, his grip on the rifle tightened. The Dominion had lied to themselves. They told their people that humanity was gone, that their war was won. So why were they here? Why send a hunter squad to an empty planet? Because they knew. Somewhere, deep in their alien minds, they had started to fear. They feared him. Jack smirked. Good. Let's make it worse. One shot. One war begins. Jack exhaled slowly. His body was exhausted, his wounds still fresh. But he pushed everything aside. He only had one chance. He steadied his pulse rifle, lining up the shot. The troopers scanned the wreckage, weapons raised. Closer, closer. One stopped directly beneath his position. Jack pulled the trigger. A burst of blue energy ripped through the alien's head, sending its body crashing to the ground. The other soldiers spun around, weapons raised. But Jack was already moving. Using the exosuit's weakened thrusters, he leaped from his hiding spot, landing hard behind cover. Plasma bolts rained down, searing the metal debris around him. Jack rolled, aimed, and fired again. Another trooper fell, his armor shattering under the force of the pulse shot. Panic rippled through the squad. They had expected a survivor, not a fighter, not a ghost. Jack wasn't just hiding. He was hunting them. A message in blood. The remaining 5 troopers tried to regroup, forming a defensive circle. One of them barked orders in their alien tongue. Jack didn't need to understand it. They were afraid. Good. Jack slung his rifle over his shoulder and pulled out his combat knife. The blade gleamed under the broken moonlight. Time to finish this. He moved like a shadow, using the ruined buildings to his advantage. The Dominion troopers fired wildly, shooting at ghosts in the dark. Jack came up behind one, blade flashing. The alien choked, its blood spilling over the ruins. 4 left. One turned, too slow. Jack grabbed his weapon, twisting it away before driving the knife into its throat. 3. The others panicked, stepping back. Too late. Jack raised his rifle and dropped another with a precise headshot. 2. The last 2 ran. Jack let them. He wanted them to run. He wanted them to tell their leaders what happened here. As the dropship's engines roared to life, Jack walked forward, standing in full view of the retreating Dominion troops, a lone human. Standing, watching, waiting. The last thing they saw before escaping was him, silent, unbroken, deadly. The fear spreads. Deep within the Dominion's warship, Commander Excelthar received the distress call. The message was frantic, the voices of his hunters shaking with something alien to their kind. Terror. The human. He is alive. Zelfar's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward on his throne of iron and bone, his claws tapping against the armrest. Impossible. The humans were eradicated. A survivor is no threat, he growled. No, came the trooper's weak voice. He is not just a survivor. Zelfar listened as the call continued. The human had moved too fast. He had fought like a predator. He had killed 5 elite Dominion soldiers alone, and let the others escape. To send a message. Zelfar's grip tightened. This was no ordinary human. This was something else, and for the first time in his brutal, merciless life, Zelfar felt something creeping into his cold alien heart. Doubt. A ghost in the shadows. Darkness. Silence. Fear. Jack Carter moved like a phantom through the ruins, his footsteps light, his breath steady. He had started with nothing. Now he had weapons, an exosuit, and something even more valuable. He had their attention. The Dominion now knew he existed. The panic in their voices, the hesitation in their movements. They feared him. But fear was not enough. Not yet. He had to become their nightmare. The hunt begins. Jack knelt on the edge of a destroyed building, watching the horizon. More Dominion ships were coming. The aliens were arrogant, but they weren't fools. They wouldn't let their troops spread stories about a lone human terrorizing them. They would try to silence him. Jack smirked. Let them try. He checked his gear. The exosuit's power cells were still unstable, but usable. His pulse rifle had limited ammo. Every shot had to count. The combat knife. Always reliable. His next move had to be strategic. A single human couldn't take on an empire in open battle. But war wasn't always about strength. It was about fear. The Dominion's trap. In orbit above Earth, Commander Excelthar seethed with rage. His empire had crushed entire civilizations. He had reduced worlds to dust without resistance. Yet here he was, dealing with one human. Unacceptable. He stood before a new strike team, handpicked from the Dominion's deadliest hunters. They were twice as fast, twice as ruthless. There is no battle, Zelfar snarled. There is only an insect hiding in the dirt. Find him. Burn him out. The Dominion warship descended, releasing scouting drones and a full hunting squad. It was no longer a search. It was an extermination mission. A ghost among the wreckage. Jack watched the new squad spread out through the ruins. They moved with precision, covering every angle, their drones scanning the wreckage. They learned. Good. Jack didn't wait for them to find him. He struck first. A drone hovered past a collapsed structure. Jack was already there. A single EMP charge, and the machine sparked, crashed, and died. One of the soldiers turned in alarm. Jack's blade was already at his throat. A quick, silent kill. 2 down. The others noticed the missing signals. The tension in their voices was clear. Jack moved before they could react. He sprinted through the shadows, using the exosuit's thrusters to jump from rooftop to rooftop. The Dominion soldiers fired wildly into the darkness, but Jack wasn't there anymore. He was a ghost. One by one, he picked them apart. A shot, a knife strike, a sudden explosion. By the time the last soldier realized he was alone, it was already over. Jack stepped out of the shadows, pulse rifle raised. The Dominion hunter raised his hands in surrender. Jack tilted his head. You came hunting for me. The alien trembled. Jack pulled the trigger. Message received. Terror takes root. On board the Dominion warship, Zelfar watched in horror as his elite hunter's signals went silent. Not a single one had reported back. Not a single one had survived. A new message was transmitted from Earth. It was from the human. A grainy, flickering video of Jack standing over a Dominion corpse, staring into the camera. His voice was calm, cold. "You left me alive. Now I leave you a choice. A pause. Run or burn." Zelfar crushed his communicator in rage. This was no survivor. This was a war. And for the first time, the Dominion was not the hunter. They were the prey. The ultimate trap. A single message was spreading across the Dominion fleet like wildfire. "He is still alive." It passed through command centers, through warships, through the minds of every officer who had once laughed at the idea of human resistance. A single human, alone. And yet, entire squads were disappearing. Commander Excelthar stared at the report in his hands. His elite forces, trained in planetary extermination, had vanished, erased like they had never existed. By one man. Zelfar's claws tightened against the metal console. His officers shifted nervously, avoiding his gaze. Fear had crept into their ranks. Whispers of the ghost of Earth had begun to spread. The warlord growled. "This ends now." Jack Carter had drawn first blood. Now, Zelfar would set a trap. The bait. Jack crouched on the edge of a ruined skyscraper, scanning the alien comm channels he had hacked. They were baiting him. A Dominion transmission echoed through the static. Human artifacts recovered. Sites secured, awaiting extraction. Jack's fists clenched. Artifacts. There was nothing left of Earth but ashes. He knew it. The Dominion knew it. Which meant, this was a trap. They were desperate now. They had given up on hunting him. Instead, they were luring him out. Jack smiled. "Fine. Let's play." The battlefield of the mind. Jack had spent years fighting wars. He knew how soldiers thought, how commanders reacted. He wasn't going to walk into their trap. He was going to set his own. Jack studied the transmission, the location, a destroyed research facility in the middle of the wasteland, wide open terrain, too easy to get surrounded. A death sentence for anyone foolish enough to take the bait. So Jack changed the battlefield. Shadows and fire. The Dominion expected Jack to attack head-on. Instead, he became the wind. He moved at night, planting explosives along the surrounding wreckage. Hidden charges, silent drones, EMP traps. The Dominion's forces arrived in full strength, waiting for him. Jack was already there. Watching. Waiting. The hunt had begun. The first move. Jack triggered the first charge. A shockwave ripped through the field, turning alien vehicles into twisted metal and fire. Confusion spread through the Dominion ranks. They weren't under attack from the front. The attack was coming from everywhere. Jack struck from the darkness, a ghost in the flames, a knife to the throat, a sniper shot from the ruins, a drone cutting through the sky. By the time the Dominion regrouped, half their forces were already dead. They had walked into his trap. The death of fear. The remaining soldiers were panicked, their formations broken. Their training was useless against an enemy they could not see. Zelfar watched from his warship, his confidence shattering. This was not the war he expected. This was not how humans were supposed to fight. He had tried to turn the battlefield into a cage. Instead, Jack had turned it into a graveyard. The final blow. As the last Dominion survivors ran, Jack stepped forward into the firelight. One of the alien officers, his armor cracked and bloodied, stared at him in disbelief. "You are just one." Jack tilted his head. His pulse rifle hummed. "That's all it takes." He fired. The last Dominion soldier fell, their screams echoing across the wasteland. The battlefield fell silent. Jack Carter stood alone. Again. A message carved in fire. From orbit, Zelfar could see the burning wreckage where his forces once stood. His trap had failed. His best troops were gone. And the human. He had left behind one single message, written in fire across the battlefield. "I am coming." Zelfar staggered back, his blood running cold. This was not just revenge. This was war. And for the first time in his life, the mighty Dominion warlord felt what it was like to be hunted. The final battle. The human versus the Empire. The Dominion had lost its grip on fear. For centuries, they had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist, conquering worlds, breaking civilizations, leaving no survivors. Their name alone was enough to bring submission. But now, their name meant nothing. Because of one man, Jack Carter, the ghost of Earth. The storm breaks. The Dominion fleet hung in orbit, massive warships blotting out the stars. A final invasion force, their last attempt to erase the human who refused to die. Commander HFY stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth's broken surface through the reinforced glass. His officers remained silent, unwilling to speak their doubts aloud. But HFY could hear it in their breaths. Fear. Jack had done something no species had ever done before. He had made the Dominion afraid of a single human. And now, HFY had no choice. He had to end this personally. The invasion begins. Dropships rain down like comets, filling the sky with fire. Thousands of Dominion warriors descended onto Earth's surface, spreading out in tight formations. Jack watched from the ruins of an abandoned facility. His exosuit was battered, his pulse rifle nearly drained, but he wasn't fighting alone anymore. Jack had found something in the wreckage, a hidden bunker, a secret the Dominion had missed, a dormant human AI war machine. Jack had woken it up, and now it was hungry for vengeance. The sky lit up as automated turrets erupted from the ground, blasting Dominion dropships out of the air. Drones, reactivated after years of silence, soared into battle. The Dominion thought they were hunting a man. They were walking into an army. The Empire breaks. HFY's forces moved in tactical waves, but something was wrong. They weren't facing a survivor. They were fighting a phantom leading a machine war. Every corner they turned, an explosion ripped through their ranks. Every street they cleared, another Dominion squad vanished. Every command they gave, Jack had already countered. The battlefield belonged to him now. HFY's last stand. From the chaos, Jack emerged. He walked through the fire, his armor blackened, his rifle humming with energy. HFY stood waiting, his massive war blade glowing in his grip. His body was covered in battle armor, his strength unmatched. "I should have killed you," HFY growled. Jack tilted his head. "Yeah, big mistake." Then they charged. The final duel. HFY swung first, his blade carving through the air like lightning. Jack barely dodged, feeling the heat of the energy weapon graze past his armor. Fast, strong, brutal. HFY was a warlord, a monster forged in battle. He was bigger, stronger, deadlier. But Jack was human. He was unbreakable. He dodged, countered, struck where it hurt the most. He moved like a ghost, every attack cutting deeper into the warlord's defenses. HFY roared in frustration. "You are nothing." Jack ducked under a final swing. His knife flashed. The warlord staggered back, his chest torn open. Jack leveled his pulse rifle at the Dominion commander. "You should have finished the job," Jack said. HFY's eyes widened. Jack pulled the trigger. A final, searing blast ripped through the warlord's chest. His body collapsed, crashing onto the battlefield. The last warlord of the Dominion was dead. The war ends. The legend begins. The Dominion fleet, leaderless and broken, began to retreat. Jack watched as the once invincible empire fled into the darkness of space, their greatest mistake burned into history. One human against an empire. And now, the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity was never weak. They just never had a reason to fight. Until now. Jack looked up at the stars. Somewhere, out there, other survivors waited. Other humans, lost, scattered, hidden. He wasn't the last. He was just the first. The The war wasn't over. It was just getting started. Humanity's legacy, the last human no more. The war was over, but Jack Carter wasn't done. He stood on the ruined battlefield, his pulse rifle cooling in his grip. Around him, Dominion warships burned in the sky, their once invincible fleet retreating into the void. The mighty empire had fallen. Its warlord lay dead at Jack's feet, his blades still glowing with spent energy. The Dominion had made one fatal mistake. They had left a human alive. And now that mistake would haunt them forever. The message to the stars. Jack walked through the wreckage of the battle, past the fallen Dominion soldiers, past the shattered remnants of Earth's last stand. He activated his stolen Dominion transmitter, tapping into their galactic communication network. The same network they had once used to broadcast their victory over Earth. Now, it would be used to announce their greatest defeat. The signal pulsed across the stars, reaching every corner of the Dominion's vast empire. A message, raw and simple. Jack stood before a burning warship, his battle-worn armor covered in dust and blood. His face was calm. His eyes were unyielding. His voice was steel. "You thought we were weak." A pause. The embers of destruction glowed behind him. "You were wrong." Across the Dominion's core worlds, across their colonies, their warships, their command centers, aliens froze in fear. They had exterminated billions. They had wiped out entire civilizations. And yet, one human had undone them all. Jack leaned closer to the transmitter. "I am coming for the rest of you." Then he cut the signal. The search for the lost. The war was over, but Jack's mission had only begun. He knew the truth now. Earth had fallen, but humanity was not extinct. There were others. Scattered colonies, lost ships, hidden survivors. Jack wasn't going to let humanity fade into history. He was going to bring them back. His first target, a black site Dominion prison world, buried in the deep reaches of space. If there were still humans out there, the Dominion would have taken them, and Jack was going to set them free. The galaxy awakens. The Dominion tried to silence their fear. They tried to erase his name, but fear spreads like wildfire. The legend of Jack Carter, the last human standing, had reached beyond the Dominion's borders, and other species, those that had once been too afraid to fight back, had begun to whisper. They had seen what one human could do, and now they asked themselves, what happens when there are more? The Dominion's grip on the galaxy began to crack. Worlds they had enslaved started rising up. Armies that had cowered in the shadows started moving. The war wasn't just Jack's anymore. It was everyone's. One man, one war, one future. Jack stood on the bridge of a stolen Dominion warship, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the cold void of space, his people were waiting. And he was going to find them. He wasn't the last human anymore. Just the first of many. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning.